So have you ever noticed that life can seem to keep repeating on you? You feel like there's no newness or excitement in your life because the same things just keep happening over and over again. Some people see them as patterns, and I get that kind of thinking, but I see it like cycles. The whole world revolves around cycles. Agriculture revolves around seasonal cycles. There's planetary cycles, lunar cycles. There's economic cycles. And that's just when you look at the world. When you focus on the social sphere, we've got birthdays every year, we've got reunions, we've got tax, we've got grand finals, we've got religious holidays and festivals. These things just keep happening on loop. And then when you focus on the self sphere, all you see is cycles too. You go to work, you go home, you go to work, you go home. Maybe you throw the gym, work, gym, home, or work, home, gym, home. But that same cycle just keeps repeating. And you got weekends and weekdays and weekdays and weekends, and it's just this never-ending cycle. And then you have the chunks of time when you're at work, and then you have a bit of holiday, and then you go back to work again, and then you have a holiday, and then you're back at work again. And some people live on this cycle of just wake up, eat, work, watch stuff, sleep, repeat. Our whole world revolves in cycles, and within cycles and around cycles. Even when you're checking your bank account, you're seeing these cycles, the subscriptions coming out and the fees coming out, and everything's just cycles upon cycles and cycles within cycles. And when I started looking at all of the cycles that go on in the world, all of the cycles that happen in society, and all of the cycles that happen in my life, my own brain keeps repeating in cycles with the same thoughts. My body keeps feeling the same emotions on repeat. And I was becoming very frustrated with life because all I found was everything just happening over and over and over again. I noticed in my relationships, it didn't matter if it was friends or partners, I was getting this, it's like the same characters, but different avatars. The same things on repeat kept happening, all the deceit and the lies and the betrayal. And I couldn't understand why this was happening to me. And I know I'm not the only one to have felt that way. Even work was just the same thing over and over again. And then when I started to understand all of the cycles that go on in the world, all of the cycles that go on in our communities, and all of the cycles that I was experiencing, how could my experiences not be cycles when my brain and body works in cycles, even my menstrual cycles? These cycles are everywhere. And once I started seeing the world this way and started thinking about the web of life, I realized something. Why do spiders create webs? They make them to catch bugs. But when you see a spider weave a web, they spiral. They start usually do they go from the outside in or the inside out? But you see them going around and around and around, but the whole web within itself. And I'm looking at this spider weave a web one night on my balcony, and I'm thinking, if I was a spider, there's no way I'd be weaving that way. That's not how my life is. I'd be jumping from strand to strand and spinning a circle on the spot. And then it hit me all of a sudden. It's the bugs. That's what we do. That's the mistake that we make. We get bugs trapped in our webs, not because that's the purpose of our web, but because those are the experiences that we have. Those are the problems and the traumas and the complications in our lives. And then what we do is, instead of weaving around our web with ease and flow like a spider, we start spiraling around that bug. The people and the experiences that we have, the things that haunt us, the things that keep replaying, we're spiraling around that bug. We're giving it more mental energy, more physical energy, more emotional energy. It's just until it's like a cocoon. It's like we've encased it in our own webbing, And that doesn't mean we stop spiraling around it. Every time that bug gets triggered, we start spiraling around it again. That's why we feel those cycles. And that's why we need to break them. We need to free those bugs from our web so that we can live with peace and with ease and with flow. None of this going around in circles over and over again. And once I came to that understanding, I could never see it any other way. All of a sudden, everyone at work that was complaining, all I noticed is, oh, what a cycle this is. And you'd hear them say that. You'd hear them say, it's like a never-ending cycle. And I'm thinking, if you can see that it's a never-ending cycle, what are you going to do about it? Then the same thing happened with my friends. Some friends are telling me the same story over and over and over again. And I'm thinking, and I'd say to them, you do that, don't you? When you recognize that you can finish their story, you tell them. Yeah, I know you told me last week. And then finish the story. Yeah, and then they just keep telling you again. I'm thinking, why do they need to tell me this again when they know I know it? They're spiraling around that bug. And you can't stop them and say, start weaving your web again, honey. No. They're just going to keep spiraling. They have to get that story out. And if they need to tell me that and express that physically, mentally and emotionally, they must be spiraling around that experience. God knows how many times. And hey, none of us are immune to doing this. We all do this. We do this to ourselves and we do this to each other. And the reason is because we're stuck. We're stuck in a cycle. When you hear your friend talking about a relationship that they're in that you know that they shouldn't be in, and they deep down know they shouldn't be in, and there's constant issues that are never getting solved, and they just keep telling you, and they will tell you it's a vicious cycle. So we recognize that this is the truth of our lives, but we don't understand what it means, and we don't know how to fix it. And this is what I'm here for. This is why I created the Web of Life, because I want people to understand themselves and understand their cycles and then break them. So let me explain something to you about cycles real quick for you to understand how it works in your web. Because our webs are not these beautiful geometric masterpieces like you see when you go across a spider's web or when you get one smashed in your face while you're going for a walk. Our webs are a tangled mess. I'm just reminded, was it William Shakespeare? What a tangled web we weave. That's more practicing to deceive, but in saying that, we deceive ourselves. We lie to ourselves far more than we will ever lie to any other human being, and that's the truth. And how can we not? We are so tangled in our own web of life. We just want to pretend it isn't what it is, because people don't know what to do about it. So there are 3 types of cycles that you experience and that we have in our lives. Mental cycles, emotional cycles, and physical cycles. Not only do I understand all of this, but I've actually figured out how cycles are made and how cycles are broken. And we'll get to that in a minute. Now, mental cycles are your thoughts. The problem with mental cycles is that we can be spiraling mentally around a topic for hours on end without being able to stop ourselves. And the problem with that is that we are feeding energy to things that are not positive in our lives. And we don't do this when things are positive. We let that stuff go real quick. We dwell on the negative. So you have an experience, and in that experience, you experience emotion. And we often confuse our thoughts and our emotions. Emotions are things like happiness and sadness and anger. But we talk about, when we describe how we feel, we put thought into it and we express our thought and confuse that with our emotions. I feel like you're not being honest with me, and I feel like, and you say things like that. Those are not emotions, those are thoughts, but you're saying, I feel like. Now, an emotional cycle is a repeated feeling, repeated emotions. And the problem is, We perceive through the lens of emotion and then immediately start mentally cycling around it. And eventually, after you've been mentally spiraling and bringing up those emotions again and then cycling emotionally and mentally at the same time, eventually all of that energy has to come out of you. That's when a cycle becomes physical. And physical cycles never come out just one way. There's multiple ways for a physical cycle to be expressed. You just look at the easiest one is the cycle of unworthiness. This is very common in everyday people. It's a self-sphere cycle, but it's something that I'm really embarrassed to say it as a former teacher, but so many people have these beliefs about themselves that are so negative, and they came from teachers or they came from school in general. Things that people say, they have one experience and it can create a cycle that is held on to for a lifetime. And so, to explain this properly, I need to tell you how cycles are made. So we're going to go back to school for a sec. And you're in an art lesson. And you're drawing. And your teacher comes over and tells you that that's rubbish and you didn't follow the instructions. I remember teachers ripping pages out or scrunching pages up, things like that. So imagine your teacher said that to you and then taken your page off you, scrunched it up and threw it in the bin and told you to start again. That experience gave you knowledge, which you took as fact, although their perspective was circumstantial at best, and you're not factoring in their own mental and emotional state at the time, but you're experiencing that like they're telling you factual information about you. So from that, you might take the knowledge that you can't draw. That knowledge that then gets integrated into your developing self-concept and forms this belief when that mental cycle of I can't draw goes with that emotional cycle of sadness and how would you classify that emotion? That would be emotionally devastating. But let's just go with sadness, because you'd also feel embarrassed in front of a class to have something like that happen. But those emotions bind with that mental cycle of I can't draw. Now that you've got a mental and emotional cycle tied together, that's where a belief's formed. And the belief is that I can't draw. The only thing left to do is for that to be expressed. And that can be expressed in multiple ways. So when the mental and emotional cycle actually bind, you're integrating that. And that knowledge you take as fact. And that's what has to come out through your expression. Expression can be things that you say and do, but it might also be things that you won't say and things that you won't do. So maybe for the rest of your life, you tell people you can't draw, or when there's some kind of creative thing happening, if you don't say it verbally, you might not partake in that activity for the sheer fact that you feel ashamed and embarrassed and you don't want to be exposed as this person who can't draw, because that's this fundamental self-belief that you have that was formulated from one experience. And I cannot tell you how many parents of children I've taught, and also just fully grown adults, have these beliefs that are instilled in them based off something a teacher said one day. That's how quick and easy a cycle can form. But how many times someone has mentally and emotionally spiraled around that bug in their web, and how many ways that physically comes out, that's up to you. And a lot of us don't actually recognize how many types of physical expression or physical cycles we have of the mental and emotional ones. But those three, the mental, emotional, and physical cycles, I call them the trifecta. Because once that cycle that is mental and emotional is physically expressed in any way, shape, or form, an actual complete cycle has formed. That is the formation of a cycle. So an experience gives you knowledge. Knowledge is then integrated after the integration phase comes the expression, and boom, you got a cycle from a bug in your web. So now, whenever you're weaving around your web, minding your own business, and something comes up about drawing, or somebody asks you to draw something or write something, you will bring up that cycle. That bug has been triggered. And it's kind of like, if you've ever seen a bug on the floor, say in your living room or kitchen or something, and you think it's dead. So you go to pick it up, and then as soon as you touch it, it starts wiggling around, and you freak out like, oh my God, I thought you were dead. Well, the same thing happens to the bugs in your web. Maybe you go for 5 years after trying to ignore anything to do with drawing, not having anything to do with it, and not partaking in any activity that brings that experience back to life in your mind. And then all of a sudden, you're a parent and one of your kids asks you to draw a star, and you freak out. You're like, no, that's okay, you do it. Or have a look on YouTube, or oh, you can do it, you don't need me, something like that. Maybe it's an inaction, or maybe you do it and you say, oh, well, don't worry, mine's not good, yours will be better than that. Both of those things are verbal expression. But the point is, you've re-triggered that bug, and that cycle is repeating while you're drawing that star, which might be simple, easy, and beautiful. In your mind, it's, I can't do this, I don't feel good, I don't like these feelings, I'm sad, I don't want to do this, it's not going to be good, I'm embarrassed, I don't want to show them this. All of these things are happening inside you, and that's the push, that's the force, that energy of the mental and emotional cycles makes it physical. And you will say things and you will do things because of it. So how do you break something like that? That is the important question that I think most people really like to get to know the answer to when they look at the Web of Life philosophy. It's one thing to understand how a cycle is made, whole different story for a cycle to be broken. And I wish I could tell you the answer came easily, but no, it didn't. I was staring at a poster on my wall that I had drawn of, I used to call it the cycle maker, but it's the formation of a cycle. Every night I would stare at it. I had it on my bedroom wall. And so at the time, I was looking at the cycles that I recognized in my own web, and some of the bugs particularly were in the childhood element, and that affected my relationships with people. And so I noticed some of the cycles that I had in my relationships and my childhood that I was working on breaking. And every night I would stare at the cycle maker poster on my wall and just wish that it was as easy to break cycles as it was to make them. And each individual cycle that I knew I was repeating in my life, I tried to break separately. And I was looking at the particular cycle like a standalone thing and trying a bunch of different strategies and seeing what worked and what didn't. But there wasn't really a framework that I had when I was doing this. I would just look at the relationship and the cycle that we had there and just try different strategies to break it. I would notice what experiences triggered the bug to resurface in my web and look at the bug and that experience and try different strategies to break it. And I was doing this with all the cycles in my life. And one day, longing for this process to be easy, because especially my relationship with my mother, it was the better part of about 6 years that I was trying a bunch of different strategies to improve our relationship and heal from my past and not let my past with her influence my perspective going into different experiences with her. And I couldn't stop that from happening. And whenever anything that happened in our relationship reminded me of the past, I would treat it like it was the past repeating itself and not me repeating a cycle. And 6 years of trying multiple different things and getting really nowhere. Even if something worked, it was fleeting, and then things would return back to the same cycle that it always was. And I'm staring at this cycle maker poster on my wall, and I just wish, why couldn't it be easy? Why couldn't it just be as simple as it is to make them? It happens with such ease. Why can't it be easy to break them? Why can't the process be so easy? And I'm thinking about all these things that people were doing, these things that were becoming so popular, and journaling and gratitude and vision boards, and at the time there was a lot of conversation about rewriting your story. And so I thought maybe I should go back into my childhood and rewrite my story like those things never happened. And I wondered if that would work. And I started thinking about all of these things together that people were doing. And I just realized, hang on a minute, all of these things, it doesn't matter what they are individually, collectively, they're all the same thing. They're different forms of expression. And expression was the end of how a cycle is made. The last step for the formation of a cycle is expression. That's when things become physical. That sort of triggered a thought, and I thought to myself, what would happen if I drew the cycle maker in reverse? And so with that in mind, I grabbed a piece of paper, and I didn't even get to finish it. So going backwards, it's expression, integration, knowledge, and experience. I didn't even get to finish the word knowledge. I just wrote no, and I stopped and I realized, oh my God, that's the answer.